two analysts published the 2028 Global Intelligence Crisis Report on Substack, a fictional micro-memo written in June 2028. It says that AI replaces white-collar workers, consumer spending will collapse, and financial markets crack. Soon after this report, the Dow dropped 800 points, and the company names directly in the report take the hardest hit. DoorDash dropped more than 7%, IBM fell 12%. It bothers me that only a few people are pushing back on this: The Economist, the hedge fund analyst, and the Bloomberg anchors. But they all focus on finance and economic terms. But nobody was asking, do these two actually understand how technology works? So I went through the 7,000 words report line by line. If you have passed 12th grade math and are a frequent user of the internet, you would immediately recognize every single one of them I'm about to point out. I found 15 flaws, and in the end, I'm going to ask you how many you have spotted. So pay attention and let's get started. Part 1. The numbers that don't survive a good Google search. Flaw number 1. 400,000 tokens per day per American. The Citrini report assumes that we'll all use at least 400,000 tokens per day in 2028. Let's make that concrete. Here's a report of how people use ChatGPT done by OpenAI. They found out roughly 4 messages per day per user at around 500 tokens per exchange. So that's about 2,000 tokens per day for a median user, less than 0.5% of the Citrini number. The only person I found who came that close, it was a Reddit user who spent 6 weeks talking to ChatGPT nonstop while driving to work, voice to text all day, every day. He hit roughly 200,000 tokens a day. With non-stop bothering ChatGPT, he still only reached half of what the Citrini reports were saying. So the scenario of the Citrini report it describes requires you to probably also use AI in your sleep. Now, flaw number 2. My friend says so. Now, I want to take this one seriously for a moment because the Citrini report leans heavily on their friend, a senior product manager at Salesforce earning about 180K per year, got laid off and now driving Uber for less than 50K salary. If that's real, I have genuine sympathy. But my issue here is how they're using one person's career trajectory as evidence of an economy-wide structure collapse. Yes, Salesforce did cut 4,000 customer support roles in 2025, explicitly citing AI agents. Here's what the report leaves out though. Salesforce then pulled back from their large language models entirely soon after because only 6% of their customers adopted and paid for Salesforce AI. Not to mention, the broader product manager job market is now up 12% year over year as January 2026. So the story they've told is that one person at one company ends up driving Uber, therefore the entire white-collar economy collapses. In statistics, we call this N equals to 1. Remember, this report moved the Dow 800 points based on math like this. Part 2. They don't know a thing about enterprise software. Flaw number 3, they think it will only take you 1 week to build your own SaaS software. Well, at least based on what they claim here. So let's look at AI code maturity in early 2026, not in demo, but in production. LinearB, a research and software company, tracked 8 million pull requests across nearly 5,000 engineering teams, and here's what they found. When human engineers write code, more than 80% of it gets accepted, while when AI writes code, only 30% made it to production. The report also explains the gap. It's because AI does not understand system structure. 2/3 of it doesn't even make it past code review. But sure, why don't you build a SaaS product and then release it to your customers? Flaw number 4. All CIOs buy the AI hype. And even if that AI writes the code, the Citrini report then assumes CIOs will rush to it. These authors probably have never bought any enterprise software before, but that's okay. Let's make it clear to them. Real enterprise software is mostly maintaining, integrating, and enhancing the workflow of existing systems. Exactly what AI avoids doing or cannot even do. AI is like a builder who can only add new rooms. ask him to fix a cracked wall, and he will just build another wall in front of it. If any CEOs watching this, you should be very worried if your CIO's first reaction is to replace all SaaS licenses with AI. Flaw number 5. SaaS is nothing but user layer. Okay, fine. These two analysts are likely not the only analysts who don't really get AI and the job of a CIO. Well, obviously, they also don't get software in general. Yes, as a user, all you see is the top layer, the apps, the dashboards, and yes, AI can build those. But that's only as thin as an apple peel to an apple. What you're actually relying on is everything underneath it, every project, every task, every decision that your company has ever logged. Or for example, the SOC 2 certification, the GDPR compliance, or the trail of your legal team depends on. Those integrations didn't take a weekend. They were woven into your organization's permissions, your approval workflows, and your automations throughout the years. Flaw number 6. Legacy systems can be replaced easily. And this thing goes deeper than either of them realized. We're talking about technology that's so old it could be their dad. The best example here is COBOL. Code written in the 1960s that still powers services you use every day. No, literally, I'm talking about every time you withdraw cash from an ATM, that transaction is almost certainly running on COBOL. 95% of the ATMs or 80% of the in-person credit card swipes all on COBOL. Pull it out tomorrow and you can't even take money out to pay for your groceries. And every time when someone tries to modernize the system, they find another tentacle that they didn't even know about. Banks have been trying to get rid of COBOL for 30 years. They can't because the cost is simply too high. Now, here's where AI makes it even worse, not better. Because COBOL has the least information on the internet, so AI couldn't even train on this. Its code success rate on this language is much worse than any modern code language that you can think of. Part 3. They see the checkout counter and then they think they own the supermarket. The next 3 flaws all share the same blind spot. So I'll start with the framing. Every industry that is supposedly being disrupted runs on invisible infrastructure that you've never seen. Infrastructure built over decades costing billions of dollars. The app, the websites, and the interface, again, it's only 5% of what's actually there. Think of it as the tip of the iceberg. An AI agent that you send out to complete a task relies on every single software infrastructure in place. Like having someone standing at the checkout counter that AI can be as smart as it wants, though none of the shopping will happen without items or supply chain behind it. And what Citrini Reports does 3 times in a row is to look at the checkout counter and has concluded that the whole supermarket is replaceable. Flaw number 7. Vibe-coded app can replace DoorDash. The report then describes the front end of food delivery app once again and concludes the whole thing is replaceable. I used to run a large portion of a global operational technology for Just Eat Takeaway, so let me explain. To make the app work, DoorDash had to physically go restaurant by restaurant, city by city, and convince thousands of independent businesses to join them. Not to mention how much time they invested just to help mom and pop shops configure their delivery readiness, photographing the menu and train their staff just using the tablets and the system. The whole supply network took 25 years and billions of dollars to build, so you can order something on your sofa when you're hungry. And now you're telling me a vibe-coded startup can replicate that whole system in a week? Maybe, yes, you can build the app in weeks, but it will have no shops and no food. Flaw number 8, a totally rational all-knowing system. And apparently it's not just food delivery that is doomed. The report extends the crisis to travel apps. They probably didn't get the memo when we've all had that 3 years ago, that AI agents actually hallucinate. For instance, it will tell you a booking is confirmed, while the reality is that it got stuck and the booking was never completed. But let's set that aside, that's a small thing. What do you think sits underneath every travel booking tool, Skyscanner and Google Flights? It's not going to be your AI agent scraping one after another airline website in real time. It would be astronomically expensive and most websites could block your AI agents within minutes. Without Skyscanner, your AI agent is useless. On top of that, the worst case scenario mentioned in the report is actually the best case scenario for these platforms, since they no longer need to pay expensive user research and UX design. Their AI era job is solely to make sure that machines can find the right information effectively. Flaw number 9. Let AI handle your financial transaction. Now here's how the report describes the payment layer. The report assumes AI agents will route payments through crypto so you can bypass all the credit card fees. But there is a reason after a decade that crypto has been invented, and still the merchants, the regulators, and the consumers have consistently rejected it for everyday transactions. Because for this to work, you will need to set up the mass complex crypto wallets adoption, the regulatory approval for stablecoins at scale, and merchant acceptance, and not to mention the fraud infrastructure need to rebuild from scratch. So it really seems like they also need to retake their course of Financial System 101. One of the reasons that banks exist is to protect you when things go wrong. The report doesn't seem to understand that. Part 4. Even if the technology works, the real world just won't allow it. Flaw number 10. On-device will handle all your decisions. The 2028 crisis report actually paints a picture of distilled models run on your phone that will quietly handle all your shoppings and all your actions in the background. Now ask yourself, what have the device companies been doing? Apple spent 3 years and billions of dollars building on-device AI for one explicit reason: to make sure your data never leaves your device. Same as Google. Their private cloud compute architecture is built around a single guarantee that your product never be available to anyone at any time unless you consent to it. It isn't altruism from Google or from Apple, of course. It's GDPR, it's CCPA, it's a decade of regulatory pressure forcing every platform owner and device owner to build privacy into their architecture. Not to mention that the on-device AI model on your iPhone is typically much smaller than the kind of AI you used to use on a day-to-day basis. So while the analysts dream of a world where all merchants get to access your data via AI, the two most powerful tech companies on earth already decided that this system shouldn't exist. Flaw 11. They have mistaken Ethereum for value. And even beyond the devices, they are again misunderstanding how the financial industry works. Let me use tax as an example because it's the clearest. When you hire a CPA to file your tax, you aren't just paying them to find the right boxes to fill in. You could Google that yourself. What you're actually paying for is this: if the IRS comes knocking, there is a licensed human being who signed their name on your return and it's legally responsible for what's on it. I doubt the IRS will accept the AI told me to as a defense when things go wrong. In fact, the IRS has already warned that AI tools can misstate whether you're qualified for a deduction, and that you, the taxpayer, remain fully liable for every number on your return. AI isn't going to jail for you. The two authors mistake the tedium of this job for their value. The tedium is really just at the surface. Underneath, it is a licensed, regulated, legally accountable human whose name is on the line. The data says the exactly opposite. Unfortunately, data, again, don't really side with them. Now, here's flaw 12 and 13. They claim white-collar workers and Indian outsourced firms going to lose their jobs. Here's how the report frames the white-collar economy. Let's look at what the data actually says right now in the real world. This chart is from Citadel Securities. Based on Indeed's live job posting data, software engineers' postings are up 11% year over year and sharply accelerating into early 2026. If AI were already replacing software engineers at the pace that the report describes, this chart would look very different. But let's not just rely on one market. Let's go to the country the Citrini report says that would be hit the hardest. India. ICR, India's top economic institution, recently released a study surveyed 600 IT firms together with OpenAI. They found no evidence of large-scale job losses. And here's actually something completely opposite. The jobs most exposed to AI, think software analysts, developers, statisticians, are experiencing the strongest growth in demand. Now, here's the part that should make the Citrini authors uncomfortable. The report does find job losses, but where? The answer is finance professionals, the exact sector in which the two Citrini analysts sit. Flaw number 14, compare apples and oranges. They compare a potential software debt crisis to the 2015 energy sector downgrades. Now, I'm a tech person, I don't do this for a living, but even I know that comparing software debts to energy debt in 2015 requires you to explain one thing first. Are the capital structure remotely similar? Because here's what the data actually shows. The 2015 energy crisis happened because energy companies had borrowed massively against oil reserve at $100 a barrel, and when oil crashed to $30 per barrel, the collateral just evaporated overnight. It was a leverage crisis with a specific trigger. Software in 2026, however, is not leveraged against a commodity price. You don't get to be confidently wrong about technology and confidently wrong about finance in the same report. This is really an achievement, I give them that. Flaw number 15. Is AI smarter than humans now? And I'm still so surprised that people traded real money based on what they pointed out in this chart. Because these two analysts even watermarked the chart. I generally don't know who they think was going to steal a poorly made up chart with wrong assumptions. It does, however, based on real data, I give them that much. But this is also where the credit ends. This chart originally comes from METR, a well-known AI research firm. However, Citrini took the data and twisted the math again. The y-axis is never about the tasks AI can do, but it's about the tasks that AI completes half the time. So here's an analogy. If you ask Claude Opus to make a £10,000 transaction for you, here's only a 50% chance that this money will land in the right account. However, Citrini took the data and said AI now can handle hours-long research and development tasks. They've entirely ignored that those tasks failed half the time. They then extrapolated it to 2028 and used it to predict the collapse of the global economy. Every single flaw we've walked through, the token math, the enterprise iceberg, the invisible infrastructure, the data that says the complete opposite, they all share one root cause. The author consistently read the service of a technology, assuming that is the technology, and build a 7,000-word market-moving, poorly researched science fiction on top of that assumption. The chart at the end is just the most honest version of what they've been doing all along, extrapolating confidently from a number whose footnote says that it's only true half the time. Now tell me if any of those 15 flaws that you instantly get while I was pointing them out. There's more data I use in the full article. You can find the link in the comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.